Here's something we don't talk about nearly enough. After the age of 60, the average adult loses about 1 to 2% of muscle mass per year. That not sound like much, but over a decade, and that can mean a 10 to 20% reduction in strength and mobility, and that has real consequences for balance, independence, and overall health. Now, if you walk into a health store or click through social media, you'll hear one thing over and over: eat more protein. And yes, protein is important. But here's the thing. It's not just about getting more grams. It's about getting smarter with the protein you already eat. In fact, some of the most powerful, overlooked sources of high-quality protein come from the usual suspects. Not eggs, not meat, not whey powder. One food, which I'll reveal in just a minute, has more protein per calorie than eggs and has been shown in clinical studies to preserve lean muscle, reduce inflammation, and support metabolic health as we age. But first, let's take a quick step back. When we studied 600 people in the Diabetes trial, some assigned to healthy low-carb, others to healthy low-fat, we didn't just look at weight loss. We looked at how they ate, what they believed about food, and how their bodies responded. What we found was surprising genetics. Insulin levels, even diet preference, didn't strongly predict success. But you know what did? Sustainable behavior, food quality, and flexibility, which brings us to today's mything that animal protein is always superior for muscle health. The truth is more nuanced and honestly more hopeful. We're going to look at 6 key insights today. Why some plant-based proteins now outperform eggs on the PDCA scale, and yes, that's a real thing. And I'll explain it simply, the science behind muscle protein synthesis, and how age changes our needs. Why digestion, not just intake, matters, and how fiber and gut health play a surprise role in protein absorption. How one food, often ignored, delivers complete protein and improves cholesterol, the behavior science of protein timing and satiety, and how to use it without micromanaging macros. And finally, how to put it all together in real meals without turning food into a spreadsheet. My goal here isn't to get you to count grams or chase some new diet trend. It's to give you practicals that fit your values, your biology, and your stage of life, whether you're 60, 70, or just starting to think about longevity more seriously. We'll translate studies into action. And if we do it right, you might leave not just knowing what to eat, but why it matters and how to make it sustainable. Let's get into it. Let's start with the protein quality question. For decades, the gold standard for evaluating protein was the Protein Digestibility Corrected Amino Acid Score, or PDCAs. It's a mouthful, but here's what it really means. How well does a given food provide the essential amino acids your body needs? And how easily can your body digest and use them? Eggs have long been considered near perfect. They score a 1-point row, the highest possible on the PDCA scale. That's not wrong. Eggs are highly bioavailable, packed with all 9 essential amino acids, and relatively easy to digest. But here's where it gets interesting. A few years ago, researchers began looking more closely at plant-based protein isolates, particularly from foods like soy peas, lentils, and even potatoes, and discovered something surprising. Under certain conditions, when concentrated and prepared in specific ways, some of these plant proteins also scored a perfect 1-0. In some cases, they even outperformed eggs per calorie or per serving size when it came to muscle protein synthesis. Take soybeans, for example. A half cup of cooked soybeans contains roughly 15 grams of protein, more than 2 eggs, and brings along fiber, iron, magnesium, and phytochemicals with anti-inflammatory properties. Unlike eggs, it contains 0 cholesterol, and in many studies, soy consumption has been linked to improved LDL profiles, especially in postmenopausal women. But what about complete proteins? Isn't that where plants fall short? That's another myth worth unpacking. Yes, some individual plant foods are low in 1 or 2 essential amino acids. But when eaten in combination, like rice and beans or lentils and quinoa, they complement each other beautifully. Your body isn't keeping a stopwatch. It's storing and recycling amino acids over the course of the day. As long as you're getting a variety of protein sources, you're covered. And here's something most people don't realize. In one 2019 randomized controlled trial published in JAMA, older adults who replaced some of their animal protein with soy protein saw no difference in lean muscle retention, but did see improvements in kidney markers and inflammation. I had a participant in one of our plant-based studies. Let's call her Sharon, who was 68 and worried that moving away from meat would mean muscle loss. She loved gardening, but lately, standing up from her knees had gotten harder. When she started integrating tofu, edamame tempeh, and pea protein smoothies, she was skeptical. But after 6 months, not only had she maintained her leg strength, she said she felt lighter in her joints and cleaner after meals. Now, I'm not claiming a miracle, but I am saying this. The science backs up her experience. So let's come back to the big reveal. Which food has more protein than eggs per serving and is completely plant-based? It's actually tempe. Tempe is a traditional fermented soy product from Indonesia. A 100-gram serving, about 35 ounces, contains 19 grams of protein, more than 3 eggs, plus fiber, iron, and probiotics from fermentation. It's minimally processed, sustainable, and incredibly versatile. And because it's fermented, it's also easier to digest than many other soy foods. That means more of the protein is absorbed with less bloating or discomfort, a common barrier for people just starting to explore plant-based proteins. Now, you don't have to eat tempeh at every meal. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Maybe swap it in for one meal a week. Try it in a stir-fry. Crumble it into a chili. Marinate and bake it like you would chicken. What matters most is that you're shifting toward food quality. And that shift can make a measurable difference in your muscle health over time. Reflect on this. What protein-rich meal could you try this week that's outside your usual comfort zone, but still delicious and satisfying? And if you're finding this kind of evidence-based, non-extreme nutrition helpful, go ahead and hit subscribe. It supports this channel, and hopefully your health too. So now that we've cracked open the protein quality conversation, let's zoom in on what actually happens to muscle metabolism after age 60, and why just eating more protein doesn't always get the job done. Here's a concept I wish was talked about more: anabolic resistance. It sounds intimidating, but here's what it really means. As we age, our muscles become less responsive to the signals that tell them to grow, especially the signal that comes from dietary protein. This means that even if you eat the same amount of protein you did in your 30s or 40s, your body won't build or maintain muscle with the same efficiency. This was demonstrated clearly in a 2013 study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. Researchers gave older and younger adults equal doses of high-quality protein and measured their muscle protein synthesis response. The younger adults' muscles responded robustly. The older group, not nearly as much, even though the protein was identical. So, what do we do about that? The answer isn't necessarily more protein. It's better timed, higher quality, and more evenly distributed protein. Most people, especially older adults, tend to underconsume protein at breakfast and overconsume it at dinner, but research from McMaster University shows that evenly distributing protein throughout the day, about 25 to 30 grams per meal, leads to significantly greater stimulation of muscle protein synthesis. That's not a supplement pitch. That's meal planning with intention. Now let's be honest, eating a toffee scramble with tempeh and spinach for breakfast might feel like a big leap, but small shifts add up. Even a cup of soy milk in your oatmeal adds 7 grams of high-quality protein, and combining it with nut butter, seeds, or whole grains can round it out further. And we can't talk about protein without talking about leucine. Leucine is an essential amino acid that acts like the starter key in the engine of muscle growth. Think of it as the ignition switch. After 60, your body needs a bit more leucine per meal to kickstart the process. Animal foods like eggs and dairy are high in leucine, but so are plant-based sources like soy, pumpkin seeds, and legumes. The key is knowing how to combine them to meet your needs. One practical tip: try building meals around protein-dense anchors, not just vegetables or carbs. A veggie stir-fry is great, but when you start with tempeh or lentils and add in grains and greens, you're designing meals with muscle in mind. And don't forget that movement is part of the equation too. Protein alone won't preserve muscle if you're sedentary. In fact, resistance training makes your muscles more sensitive to protein, even in older adults. In one meta-analysis of adults over 60, those who combined dietary protein changes with strength training saw double the gains in muscle mass compared to those who only changed their diet. So the most powerful combo: consistent proteins, consistent resistance. I had a retired school teacher in one of our community programs, 72 years old, who started doing simple bodyweight squats while microwaving her lunch. Not fancy, not Instagram worthy, but she paired those with protein-rich meals built around tofu, lentils, and grains. 6 months later, she was walking farther, climbing stairs with less effort, and feeling more energized throughout the day. That's not hype. That's the cumulative impact of small, science-informed shifts. So ask yourself, what's one meal, just one, where you could have high leucine plant protein this week, and maybe one set of squats before dinner? Let's talk about something most protein discussions skip entirely: your gut. Not the six-pack kind. I mean your digestive system, and specifically the trillions of microbes that live there. Because here's the thing, it's not just how much protein you eat. It's how much your body actually digests, absorbs, and uses. And digestion, as it turns out, is deeply influenced by the health of your gut microbiome. Think of your microbiome like a rainforest, incredibly diverse, full of complex ecosystems, and sensitive to what you feed it. When the gut is healthy, you absorb nutrients more efficiently, including amino acids from the proteins you eat. When it's out of balance, say from years of low fiber, high processed diets, protein digestion can be impaired, inflammation increases, and nutrient absorption suffers. This becomes especially important as we age. One study from the University of Arkansas showed that older adults had significantly reduced protein absorption rates compared to younger adults, even when eating the exact same meal. Part of that was due to reduced stomach acid and enzyme production, but part of it was linked to gut inflammation and microbial imbalance. So how do we improve protein absorption? Step 1. Feed your microbiome. That means fiber, especially from whole plant foods. Fiber isn't just roughage. It's fuel for the beneficial bacteria that help regulate inflammation, that maintain the gut lining, and support digestion. The more diverse your fiber sources, beans, lentils, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, nuts, the more robust your microbial ecosystem becomes. In fact, the American Gut Project, which analyzed microbiome data from over 10,000 people, found that the single strongest predictor of a healthy gut microbiome was not vegan vs omnivore or organic vs conventional. It was simply how many different plant foods people ate each week. The magic number, about 30 different plants per week. Now, I know, that sounds like a lot. But if you count herbs, spices, nuts, seeds, fruits, and veggies, it's actually doable. Another key player here is fermented foods. Tempeh, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, yogurt, kefir. These foods introduce live cultures that can support digestion. Tempeh, as we discussed earlier, is a rare triple threat high in protein, fermented for better absorption, and fiber rich. And here's a little known bonus. A healthy gut microbiome can help synthesize certain amino acids and reduce nitrogen waste, making your overall protein metabolism more efficient. One participant in our community-based program, a 65-year-old man named Paul, had always struggled with bloating when he tried plant proteins. He told me, "I like lentils, but they don't like me." After a few weeks of gradually increasing fiber, adding fermented foods, and slowly introducing legumes alongside cooked veggies and rice, and he found that the bloating subsided, and he was finally able to include those foods regularly. His takeaway: my gut just needed a little warm up. So here's the real shifting. It's not just about eating protein. It's about creating a digestive environment that can use it. That means eating a diverse array of plants, not for weight loss, but for gut balance, including fermented foods regularly, drinking enough water, especially with higher fiber intake, and being patient with your body as it adapts. Your gut is remarkably responsive, even after 60. And a healthier gut doesn't just help with protein. It supports mood, immune function, inflammation, and long-term vitality. So here's a question worth pondering this week. How could you help your gut do its job so your muscles get the most from what you eat? And if this kind of science-backed, whole-body approach resonates, feel free to subscribe. It helps support the channel, and maybe your microbiome too. Let's bring all these threads together: protein, quality, digestion, aging muscles, and look at one remarkable food that checks all the boxes. You've heard of it already, tempeh, but we're going to take a closer look, because this isn't just a trendy plant protein. It's a nutritional powerhouse with real clinical backing, cultural roots, and practical versatility. And for people over 60, it's one of the most underrated tools to prevent muscle loss and support long-term health. Let's start with what makes it nutritionally special. A standard 3.5-ounce, 100,000 serving of tempeh delivers 19 grams of complete protein, all 9 essential amino acids, 5 to 7 grams of fiber, 0 cholesterol, iron, calcium, magnesium, and beneficial compounds from fermentation. Unlike ultra-processed meat substitutes, tempeh is made from whole fermented soybeans, often with just 3 ingredients like soybeans, a fermentation starter, and sometimes grains like rice or barley. That's it. No synthetic isolates, no added oils or gums. And here's the kicker in terms of protein per calorie. Tempeh outperforms eggs. Let's do the math. 2 eggs about 140 calories, 12 grams of protein. Tempeh, 100 hing about 190 calories. Then 19 grams of protein, that's roughly 1 gram of protein per 10 calories. Comparable or better than most animal sources, with the added benefits of fiber and no saturated fat. But how does it perform in real bodies? A 2020 clinical trial in nutrients looked at adults over 60 who replaced one daily animal protein serving with tempeh or tofu. After 12 weeks, participants in the plant protein group preserved more lean muscle mass, improved gut health markers, and saw a modest drop in LDL cholesterol. No decline in grip strength. No protein deficiency, just better outcomes. That's powerful and ethical too, because tempeh is not only good for you, It's also dramatically more sustainable. Producing a kilogram of temp requires 74% less water, 94% fewer greenhouse gas emissions, over 90% less land use compared to beef, according to life cycle analysis from the University of Michigan. This is where Gardner's Stealth Nutrition comes in. You don't have to preach environmentalism or ethics at every meal. But when a food nourishes you, protects the planet, and fits into delicious, everyday meals, that's worth paying attention to. And temp fits beautifully into a wide range of cuisines, marinated and grilled, stir-fried with vegetables, crumbled into tacos or chili, sliced onto salads, even air-fried as a crispy snack. It soaks up flavor and adds substance. I had a participant, a 70-year-old former nurse, who said she was suspicious of anything called a meat alternative. Fair enough, but once we showed her how to marinate temp in balsamic vinegar, garlic, and rosemary, and roast it like a cutlet, she was hooked. It's not trying to be meat, she told me. It's just good. So what can we take away here? Temp is a complete, highly bioavailable protein. It supports muscle maintenance, gut health, and cholesterol, especially as we age. It's sustainable, affordable, and versatile. And when prepared well, it's delicious. The invitation here isn't to give up eggs or meat. It's to reconsider your protein toolbox. Could temp be, just once or twice a week, be a way to support your health and your values? It's not about perfection. It's about progress, grounded in science and lived experience. So here's your micro challenge for the week. Try tempeh just once. Stir-fried, grilled, or roasted. Notice how it feels. Not just in your body, but in your relationship to food. By now, we've covered quality, digestion, and the surprising power of foods like tempeh. But to make these changes stick and actually translate into better health, we need to zoom out from biology and look at behavior. Because here's something we've learned over and over, not just in our Stanford trials, but in real-world programs. Nutrition science doesn't matter if it doesn't fit your life. Let's talk about protein timing and satiety, and how to use them without micromanaging macros or turning every meal into a math problem. First, a foundational concepting. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. That's not new. Multiple studies, including a meta-analysis in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, have shown that higher protein meals lead to greater fullness, lower subsequent calorie intake, and better body composition outcomes, especially in older adults. But what's less talked about is this. When you eat protein may be just as important as how much. Most Americans eat 10 to 15 grams of protein at breakfast, then over 40 grams at dinner. But research suggests that spreading protein more evenly across meals, around 25 to 30 grams per meal, leads to better muscle retention, more stable energy, and improved appetite regulation. In one 2014 study published in the Journal of Nutrition, older adults who consumed evenly spaced protein across 3 meals built more muscle than those who front or backloaded it, even though their total daily intake was identical. So what does that mean practically? Instead of a low-protein breakfast like toast and jam, try whole grain toast with almond butter and soy milk, or oats with hemp seeds, walnuts, and berries. For lunch, consider a lentil salad, a tofu wrap, or even leftovers from a protein-rich dinner. Snacks can work too. Things like edamame, roasted chickpeas, or a smoothie with pea or soy protein. You don't need to count grams obsessively. You just need to build each meal around a protein anchor, as we talked about earlier. Then let the rest of the plate follow. Now, let's touch on something deeply human: habits. In the DenFit study, we saw that the people who were most successful weren't those who followed the perfect meal plan. They were the ones who found small, consistent changes that felt realistic. The ones who said, I don't need to change everything, just breakfast, or just my snack routine. One participant, an 82-year-old man named Don, started with one simple shifting, adding tofu to his stir-fry every Monday night. That's it. One meal. But after a few weeks, it became normal. Then he started doing the same on Thursdays. Then he added a soy protein smoothie after his morning walk. Over 6 months, he gradually went from 40 to 80 grams of protein per day without ever feeling restricted. That's the magic of behavior changing when it's based on rhythm, not willpower. And here's something else worth mentioning. Protein-rich meals tend to crowd out less nutritious foods, not through restriction, but through satisfaction. When your meals are balanced, you're naturally less likely to reach for ultra-processed snacks that spike blood sugar and leave you hungry an hour later. This is a key reframe. Don't think about cutting foods out. Think about adding in what you need more of. Let protein-rich, high-fiber foods crowd out the less helpful stuff, gently, gradually, and sustainably. So here's a question worth reflecting on this week. What's one meal you eat regularly? Breakfast, lunch, or dinner where you could anchor it with a satisfying, high-quality plant protein. If this kind of science meets Habit framing helps you rethink food in a sane, evidence-based way. Consider subscribing. We're building something thoughtful here. And you're invited. By now, you've got the science. We've talked about anabolic resistance, plant proteins like tempeh, the gut microbiome, and how timing and satiety shape behavior. But none of it matters if we don't talk about the how. How do we turn these insights into real meals in real kitchens with real lives, budgets, and time constraints? This is where things get personal, because food isn't just biology. It's memory, identity, and routine. In our community-based programs at Stanford, when we ask older adults what they eat, it's often not about preferences. It's about habits. We've had cereal every morning since 1965. Dinner's always meat, starch, and a veggie. That's not laziness. That's human nature. So the real question is, how do we tweak familiar routines just enough to make them healthier without throwing everything out? Let's look at a few concrete examples. Breakfast. If you're used to toast and coffee, try swapping in sprouted grain bread with almond butter, a soy latte, and maybe some hemp or chia seeds sprinkled on top. You've now bumped your protein to 18 to 22 grams without dramatically changing the experience. Still toast. Still coffee. Just more supportive. Lunch instead of a deli sandwich, consider a whole grain wrap with hummus, temp strips, arugula, and roasted red peppers. Or a lentil soup with whole grain crackers and a small side salad. It's satisfying, portable, and deeply nourishing. Dinner, one of our favorite swaps in workshops is taking familiar meals and flipping the protein. Love spaghetti and meatballs. Try whole wheat pasta with lentil meatballs. Craving tacos? Use seasoned temp black beans or toffee crumbles loaded with avocado, cabbage, and salsa. The idea isn't to become vegan overnight. It's to make plant-predominant eating feel doable. If you go from 0 plant proteins to 2 or 3 meals a week, that's a massive health win. One tool that works especially well is what we call the 1-2-3 rule. 1 plant-based protein per meal, 2 colors of vegetables on the plate, 3 meals each week where meat takes a backseat or disappears entirely. It's simple, memorable, and rooted in the evidencing greater plant diversity, more fiber, balanced protein intake, all linked to better metabolic and muscle health. Now, let's talk about joy, because no one sticks with a meal plan that feels like punishment. Food needs to be flavorful, culturally resonant, and emotionally satisfying. That's why we encourage people to cook with spices, experiment with international cuisines, and reclaim plant-based eating as something abundant and alive, not restrictive or bland. If you like Asian flavors, temp stir-fried with tamari, garlic, and bok choy. Love Mediterranean chickpea stew with lemon, cumin, and greens. Southwestern vibe. Black bean chili with smoked paprika and sweet potato. Your plate becomes your pharmacy, but also your passport. And here's something ethical to consider for many: eating more plants isn't just about personal health, it's about reducing harm, supporting sustainability, or being in alignment with values of compassion and justice. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but when the same meal can support your body, your beliefs, and the planet, that's a powerful triple win. A man in one of our workshops put it best. He said, "I don't think I could ever give up meat completely, but I can eat with more intention and less autopilot. That's it. That's the whole game. Intentionality over perfection. Progress over dogma." So, as you think about your own meals this week, ask yourself, where could I swap one animal-based protein for a plant-based option? Not as sacrifice, but as experiment. A small shift, a single ingredient, but over time, a totally different trajectory for your health. So let's pause and take a breath. We've covered a lot. Not just facts, but frameworks. And underneath it all, one clear message has emerged: preventing muscle loss after 60 isn't about chasing the latest supplement or obsessing over grams. It's about understanding how your body changes with age and feeding it accordingly with foods that are rich in quality protein, fiber, and intention. Let's recap the 6 core ideas we explored. Protein quality is more than a label, and some plant foods like tempeh now rival or exceed eggs in both digestibility and amino acid completeness. Muscle protein synthesis slows after 60, but you can overcome this with high leucine meals spaced throughout the day and a little movement. Your gut plays a surprisingly big role in protein absorption, and feeding your microbiome with fiber and fermented foods improves both digestion and immunity. Tempeh is a powerful example of food that nourishes muscle, supports the gut, and reflects values like sustainability and cultural wisdom. Timing and satiety matter, not to create rules, but to support your natural rhythms and reduce the roller coaster of hunger and fatigue. Real success comes from real meals, things you actually enjoy and can repeat. It's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional. And underneath all of that is a mindset shifting. You don't have to overhaul your life. You just have to notice what's on your plate and experiment gently with making it better. You're not doing this because you fear aging. You're doing it because you respect aging and want to meet it with strength, resilience, and grace. And if we zoom out even more, this isn't just about personal health. The food choices you make, especially the shift toward more plant-centered proteins, ripple outward. They affect the land, the water, the next generation. Every bite is a small vote for the kind of future you believe in. So here's your invitation, a simple, doable challenge for this weekend. Try just one plant-based meal with a high-quality protein like temple lentils or tofu. Notice how it tastes, how you feel afterward, how it fits into your values. That's it. No tracking, no guilt, just awareness. And if you find something you like, build on it. That's how change sticks one meal at a time in a direction that feels like you. I'd love to hear in the comments, what's one plant protein you're curious to try? Or one meal that's already working for you? And if this speech helped you think differently about aging, strength, or food, feel free to hit the like button. It really does help more people find this evidence-based, hype-free content. Subscribe if you want more talks like this. Grounded in science, guided by values, and aimed at helping you live well for the long run. Because we're not just building better bodies, we're building a community that values health, science, and sanity. And you're a part of it. Let's keep going.